A gynecologist warning: 4 intimate habits that can harm circulation after menopause. Elena was 74 years old when it happened. She had thought it would be just another ordinary and unremarkable morning. She stepped into her bathroom, humming a soft tune, when suddenly a profound wave of dizziness washed over her. Her heart was beating, not exactly racing, but something felt distinctly and unnervingly off. It was not a heart attack. It was not a stroke. It was her circulation, her very blood flow, that had experienced a dramatic and unexpected dip. What shocked her the most, however, was the underlying cause. It was not some unusual or rare disease. It was, in fact, something she had been doing quietly and privately for over 50 years. Something that most women are often told is perfectly normal and healthy: the practice of masturbation. Now please allow me to be perfectly and unequivocally clear, right from the very start. It was not the act of self-pleasure itself that had created the problem for her. The real and significant issue was how she had been doing it, in the exact same habitual and unexamined way for many, many decades. What had once seemed completely harmless to her in her 30s and 40s had quietly and insidiously become a risky practice in her 70s. No doctor had ever taken the time to warn her about this. No book had ever explained it to her. And so, just like so many of the other women I meet in my practice, she had never once suspected that her most private and personal routine could be silently shaping the state of her circulation, the quality of her physical sensitivity, and her overall sense of confidence. Hello, I am Dr. Lily Stones. For more than 30 years, I have dedicated my entire professional career to the support of women through every single stage of their lives, and that is especially true for women who are in their 60s, their 70s, and beyond. We will often have conversations about things like cholesterol, blood pressure, bone density, or even the subtle changes that can occur in one's memory. But we very rarely ever talk about the subject of intimacy, about what truly happens to your circulation, to your capacity for arousal, and to your sense of confidence as you begin to age. And yet, this particular area of your health possesses the incredible power to be able to influence everything from the quality of your sleep to the state of your relationships, and even to the very way that you carry yourself in public. Today, I want to have a very open, a very compassionate, and a very practical conversation with you. We are going to be talking about the hidden and often overlooked ways that certain specific self-pleasure habits that are completely and entirely normal in our younger years, can actually begin to work against you in your later years of life. And please know that I am not here to shame you, and I am not here to scare you. I am here to empower you with the kind of knowledge that you were likely never given, so that you can continue to enjoy the experience of intimacy in a way that truly nourishes your body, instead of in a way that places an undue amount of stress upon it. I know that this is a very sensitive subject. A great many women have whispered these very same questions to me in the quiet and the confidential space of my own clinic: retired teachers, dedicated nurses, talented artists, and proud grandmothers. Women who had all thought that they were completely and utterly alone, or that they were even somehow broken. But here is the profound and the beautiful truth: you are not at all broken. You have simply never been told how your own body is designed to change with the passage of age, and how those very same changes will then require you to adopt some new and different approaches to your own self-care. Here is the medical side of all of this. As we begin to move past the transition of menopause, our blood vessels will naturally begin to lose some of their elasticity, our skin will begin to become thinner, and the levels of our hormones, like estrogen, which had once worked to support our capacity for arousal and for a rapid state of healing, will begin to decline. And all of this means that the very same techniques that had once felt so completely harmless to you and even healthy in your 30s or in your 40s can now begin to quietly and insidiously chip away at the health of your own circulation. And over the course of time, this can work to reduce your physical sensitivity. It can work to create a series of micro-traumas in your very delicate tissues, or it can even leave you feeling a sense of numbness, instead of a sense of being vibrantly and wonderfully alive. I would like for you to please try to think of it in this way. Your own body at the age of 60 or of 70 is not at all failing you. it is in fact simply asking you for a different and a more compassionate kind of care. In the very same way that you would not at all expect to be able to run a full marathon without any kind of a proper preparation at the age of 70, you also cannot at all expect your own intimate system to be able to respond in the very same way that it had done at the age of 30 if you do not at all adjust your own personal approach. That is precisely why, in this particular video, I am going to be walking you through the 4 most common and the most significant mistakes that women will unknowingly make when it comes to the practice of self-pleasure after the age of 60. I have seen these very same mistakes being made time and time again in my own clinical practice, and I am also going to be showing you how you can begin to gently and to mindfully shift your own personal habits, so that instead of them being able to harm your own circulation, you, in fact, be able to support your own sense of long-term vitality. And here is a personal promise from me to you: if you are able to stay with me until the very end of our conversation today, you will be able to discover the single most common mistake of all, the very one that over 90% of all of the older women that I speak with are currently making. And the simple act of correcting it could very well be able to make a truly dramatic and a truly profound difference in the way that you are able to feel, both on a physical and on an emotional level. But before we dive in, I would be so very honored if you would take just a moment to be able to let me know that you are here with me. And if this particular topic feels as though it is an important one for you, I would be so very grateful if you would please like this video, if you would please subscribe to our channel, and if you would please tap on the notification bell so that you will never miss out on any of the important advice that has been specifically designed for women who are just like you. And in the comments section below, I would be so very grateful if you would just simply type a 1 if this particular topic is able to resonate with you, or a Z if you are still feeling a little bit unsure about it. And either way, I would be so very honored to be able to know exactly where you are on this particular journey. Alright, let's go ahead and begin. The very first mistake that we are going to be talking about is one that can often seem to be quite innocent and even quite efficient, but in reality it can be able to silently and insidiously place a great deal of stress on your own delicate blood vessels every single time that you do it. Mistake number 1 is the act of rushing through the experience of pleasure and of thereby triggering a form of a circulatory shock in your own body. Mistake number 1 was the act of rushing, of treating the experience of pleasure as though it were some kind of a sprint rather than a gentle and a leisurely walk. But even if you have already been able to successfully slow down your own pace, a great many women will still find themselves falling into a second and a very common habit. And this particular one is one that is almost entirely and completely unconscious. You may not even be able to realize that you are doing it until I am able to describe it to you right here and right now. Mistake number 2 is the act of holding your own breath and of tensing your own pelvic floor, which in turn can work to silently and insidiously choke off your own circulation. Over the course of many decades now, I have been able to notice this very same pattern in so very many of the women that I have seen in my own clinic. And please know that it is not something that is at all able to show up in any kind of a lab test, and it is also not at all something that you will be able to find in any kind of a medical textbook, but it is in fact something that is able to show up in your own body. During your own personal moments of self-pleasure, you may begin to notice that your own shoulders are beginning to creep upwards, that your own abdomen is beginning to stiffen, that your own jaw is beginning to tighten, and that without even realizing that you are doing it, you are beginning to hold your own breath. And at first glance, this may all seem to be quite harmless to you, but from a purely physiological perspective, it can have some very big and some very significant consequences for you. When your own breath has become very shallow and when your own pelvic muscles have become very clenched, your own nervous system will then begin to slip into a very mild and a very subtle form of a fight or flight response. And instead of your own body being able to open up and to be able to allow a fresh supply of oxygen-rich blood to be able to flow into your own clitoris and into your own vaginal tissues, your own body will in fact begin to constrict, and your own circulation will then begin to slow down right at the very same moment that you are needing it the very most. And here is precisely why that particular matter is so very important. Your own clitoris is one of the very most blood-sensitive structures in your entire body, and it is in need of a very soft and a very steady flow of your blood in order to be able to swell, to be able to reawaken all of its many delicate nerves, and to be able to deliver a profound sense of a physical sensation to you. And when you are able to cut off that very vital and that very important flow of your blood, even if it is for just a few short minutes at a time, you will then be able to interrupt the entire and the complete cycle of your own personal arousal. And over the course of time, this can very easily begin to become a very deeply ingrained habit for you. And your own body can then begin to learn how to be able to pair the experience of intimacy with a sense of a physical tension, rather than with a sense of a profound and of a deep relaxation. I can still so vividly remember a patient of mine, Margaret, who was 69 years of age. She had first come to see me almost in a state of tears and had said, "Dr. Stones, I feel as though my own body simply does not want to be able to respond to me anymore. It now takes me forever to be able to feel anything at all." And when I had then asked her if she had ever been able to notice her own breathing during these moments, she had then paused for a moment and had then said, "You know what? I think that I do in fact hold my own breath." And that one single and simple moment had been so very, very eye-opening for her. And when she had then begun to practice a form of a deep and of a slow breathing, and had then allowed her own pelvic floor to be able to fully and completely relax, her own sense of circulation had been able to improve in a matter of just a few short weeks. And she had later told me, "I did not at all realize just how much of my own life I had been choking off, just by simply holding my own breath." So, if you are able to take just one single and simple thing away from our discussion of this second and very common mistake, please allow it to be this: when you are able to stop your own breathing, you are also able to stop your own flowing. And when you are able to stop your own flowing, you are also able to stop your own feeling. But even with a state of a relaxed form of breathing, there is also another very common trap that you can be able to fall into, one that will very often begin with some very good and with some very well-meaning intentions. It is something that I will so often see in the lives of the women who are currently navigating their own retirement, who are navigating their own widowhood, or who are even just navigating a state of a profound and of a deep loneliness. And it is mistake number 3. The act of a daily form of stimulation, without any form of a proper and of a sufficient recovery, which in turn can work to quietly and insidiously drain your own personal drive. I would like for you to please try to think of it as being like a form of an exercise. When you were much younger, you were most likely able to work out on a daily basis, and to then just simply bounce back from it all very, very quickly. But now your own muscles and your own delicate tissues are in need of a certain amount of time in order to be able to properly and to fully recover. And the very same principle is also able to apply to your own intimate system as well. The act of a daily form of a self-pleasure may at first feel to be quite comforting or to be quite routine to you, but if your own body does not at all have enough time to be able to properly and to fully rest, the effects of this practice can very easily be the very opposite of what you are hoping for. Brenda, who was a 72-year-old retired nurse, had once told me, "I do it every single day simply because it is able to help me to be able to fall asleep at night. But then right afterwards I am always left feeling so very, very flat and almost completely and utterly empty." And she had simply thought that there was something that was wrong with her. But the profound truth of the matter was that her own body was not at all failing her. It was in fact simply and purely overworked. Her own delicate nerve endings had not at all had enough time to be able to properly and to fully reset themselves. Her own delicate blood vessels had not at all had a chance to be able to properly and to fully repair themselves. And her own precious energy reserves were being stretched far too thin. And when the act of a stimulation is able to become a constant and an unvarying thing, without any kind of a variety or of a pause, you may then begin to notice a very distinct dulling effect, a much lower level of your own physical sensitivity, a lingering sense of a numbness, and even a profound sense of an emotional fatigue. And the experience of a pleasure will then begin to stop feeling like some kind of a precious and a beautiful gift, and will then begin to start feeling like some kind of a tedious and a mundane chore. And that very same sense of a profound and of a deep depletion can then begin to spill over into your own overall mood, into the quality of your own sleep, and even into your own personal sense of confidence. And please know that this does not at all mean that you should be giving up on the practice of a self-pleasure. Far from it. In fact, it simply means that your own body is now asking you for a little bit more of a balance. And please know that the act of a rest is not at all a form of a deprivation. It is in fact a form of a profound and of a deep restoration. And just as you would be sure to allow your own sore muscles to be able to heal after a very strenuous workout, that the act of giving to your own intimate system just a day or two to be able to properly and to fully recover can actually and truly be able to bring back to you your own sense of desire, of your own physical sensitivity, and of your own profound sense of joy. So far we have been able to look at two very different and very distinct habits, the act of a breath holding and the act of an overuse, that are both able to quietly and insidiously restrict your own sense of circulation, and both of them over the course of time are able to weaken the very same areas of your own body that you are so deeply and so desperately trying to be able to nurture. But there is still one more very common mistake that we need to be able to talk about, and it is not one that at all begins in your own body, it is one that in fact begins in your own brain. And for a great many women, this is the very hardest one of all for them to be able to recognize, and I will be sure to explain that to you in just a moment. But first, please allow me to ask you, have you ever been able to catch yourself clenching your own muscles or holding your own breath without even realizing that you were doing it? And if so, I would be so very honored if you would please type the word yes in the comments section below. And if you are not at all sure, then I would be so very honored if you would please type the word maybe in the comments section below. And please know that the simple act of sharing your own personal experience will not only be able to help you, but it will also be able to help so many other women to be able to realize that they are not at all alone in this particular experience. Now, let's go ahead and explore the fourth and the very most common mistake of all, the very same kind of a mistake that is able to rewire your own brain and to be able to starve your own sense of a real and of a true intimacy. We have already been able to explore just how the acts of a rushing, of a breath holding, and of a daily form of an overuse can all be able to quietly and insidiously undermine your own sense of circulation and of your own personal sense of confidence. But the fourth and final mistake that we are going to be talking about today is a very different one. It is not at all one that is able to begin in your own muscles or in your own delicate blood vessels. It is one that in fact is able to begin in your own brain. Mistake number 4 is the act of relying far too heavily on the use of a fantasy or of an overstimulating form of a media, which in turn is able to starve your own sense of a real and of a true intimacy. And let's be sure to talk about this in a very gentle and in a very compassionate way, because I do in fact know that it is able to touch upon something that is very, very personal to all of us, the feeling of a loneliness, of a longing, and of the deep and the profound human need for a sense of a connection. And over the course of many, many years now, a great many women who are in their 60s, their 70s and beyond, have all been able to share with me that they will often be able to use the act of a fantasy, of some romantic novels, or even of some explicit forms of a media in order to be able to help them to be able to feel a sense of a desire. And at first glance, there is not at all anything that is wrong with this particular practice. And after all, the use of our own imagination has always been a very important and a very integral part of the experience of an intimacy. But here is what I have been able to see happen time and time and time again when the human brain is able to become so very, very conditioned to a very intense or to a very highly stimulating form of a material. It will then begin to rewire itself. The dopamine system in your own brain, the very same part of your own brain that is responsible for governing your own sense of a reward and of a pleasure, will then begin to get used to those very same artificial highs. And then slowly but surely, the experience of a real-life form of a touch, of a gentle form of a presence, or even of a loving form of an intimacy can then begin to start to feel so very, very muted in comparison. I will never ever be able to forget one of my very dear patients, Diana. She was 67 years of age, she was a widow, and she was so incredibly and so unbelievably brave to be able to speak so very, very openly with me about all of this. She had said to me, "Dr. Stones, I truly and completely feel broken. I am now only able to respond to my own body when I am watching something online, and when I am just with myself, or when I am even just imagining someone that I so deeply and so truly care about. It all just feels so very, very flat to me." And she had then whispered those very same words to me, as if she had been carrying with her a very secret and a very heavy sense of a shame. But I had then told her exactly what I am now telling all of you right here and right now. You are not at all broken, you are in fact just simply and purely conditioned. And when the human brain is able to get so very, very overstimulated, the very same signals that are responsible for triggering a healthy and a robust flow of your own circulation in your own pelvic area can then begin to become very disrupted. And that simply means that you will then begin to experience a much lower level of a blood flow to your own clitoris. You will then begin to experience a much lower level of your own body's natural production of a lubrication, and you will then begin to experience a growing and a pervasive sense of a disconnection from your very own body. And for all of the many women who are over the age of 60 when their own delicate blood vessels are already so much more delicate and when their own hormone levels are so much lower, this particular breakdown in the brain-body connection can be especially and particularly discouraging for them. But here is the wonderfully and the beautifully encouraging part of all of this. Your own brain is, in fact, able to heal itself. And the process of a neuroplasticity, the very same process that is the brain's own innate ability to be able to rewire itself, is not at all something that will ever be able to disappear from your own life. You can, in fact, be able to retrain your own internal system to be able to once again respond to a much more natural, to a much softer, and to a much more authentic form of a stimulation. And while it does in fact take a certain amount of your own patience, I have personally been able to see it happen in the lives of the women who are well into their own 70s and even into their own 80s. So what can you be able to do if you have in fact been relying on the use of a fantasy or of a media much more than you would like to be? Well, the very first and the very most important step that you can take is to simply cultivate a sense of an awareness. I would like for you to please try to notice for yourself what you are reaching for and how it is able to make you feel right afterwards. Are you able to feel satisfied, or are you able to feel empty? Are you able to feel connected, or are you able to feel distant? And all of those very small and very subtle clues will be able to tell you whether or not your own personal habits are currently working to nourish you or to quietly and insidiously deplete you. And the second step that you can take is to simply begin to experiment with some much gentle and with some much softer sources of your own personal arousal, the use of your own memory, of your own sense of touch, of your own sense of scent, or even of the use of some beautiful and of some calming music. It can be anything at all that is able to invite your own senses back into the present moment instead of pulling you into a state of an overstimulation. And please know that this is not at all about any sense of a restriction. It is in fact all about a profound and a beautiful sense of a reconnection. It is all about the act of letting your own body and your own mind be able to rediscover all of the many simple and all of the many grounding sensations that can be able to restore your own sense of circulation and of your own sense of intimacy in a much more natural and in a much more beautiful way. I had another patient, Joanne, who had once decided to put away all of her own media for a full 30 days, and she had later told me that the very first week of it was very, very hard for me. I had felt so very, very restless. But then by the third and final week of her own personal experiment, she had begun to feel so much more alive in her very own body. She had said, "My own sense of physical sensitivity has now returned to me, and I can now feel my own heart as it has begun to open up once again." And that particular shift was not at all about the act of her having to give something up. It was in fact all about the profound and the beautiful process of her being able to give to her own body and to her own brain the very same space that they had both so deeply and so desperately needed in order to be able to reset themselves. Now please allow me to bring all four of these very common mistakes together for you, and whether it is the act of a rushing, of a breath holding, of an overuse without a proper sense of a recovery, or of a reliance on a fantasy, the very same common thread that is able to tie all of these things together is this: your own body is always and constantly sending you a host of different and distinct signals that it so deeply and so desperately wants to be able to be treated with a sense of a patience, of a breath, of a balance, and of a presence. And here is the very most hopeful and the very most beautiful truth of all of this. Every single one of these very same habits is completely and utterly reversible. You are not at all locked into any of these particular patterns forever. Your own sense of circulation can be able to improve, your own sense of physical sensitivity can be able to return, and your own sense of personal confidence can be able to grow so much stronger. And in fact, in the very next part of our discussion today, I am going to be showing you exactly how you can begin to shift from a state of these very same common mistakes and into a state of some much more healing and of some much more beneficial practices. We will be sure to talk about the importance of the act of slowing down, of the act of breathing deeply, of the act of resting between your own personal sessions, and of the act of retraining your own brain to be able to once again respond to a much softer and to a much more nourishing form of a pleasure. And I will also be sure to share with you some of the very powerful and of the very inspiring stories of the women who have been able to make these very same changes in their own lives, and who have then been able to see their own sense of vitality be able to transform, sometimes in a matter of just a few short weeks. But before we go on, please allow me to ask you something. Have you ever been able to notice yourself as you have begun to rely so much more on the use of a fantasy or of an outside form of a stimulation than you had used to? And if so, I would be so very honored if you would please type the word reset in the comments section below. And if you have already been able to try the act of stepping back from this and have then been able to find a sense of an improvement, I would be so very honored if you would please type the word alive in the comments section below. And please know that your own personal story just might be the very thing that is able to give another woman the courage that she needs in order to be able to try. So please be sure to stay with me. And in the very next section of our discussion today, we will be sure to explore just how some very small and some very simple changes can be able to bring back to you your own sense of circulation, of your own physical sensitivity, and of your own personal sense of confidence, even after many decades of some very deeply ingrained habits that you may have once thought were permanent. By now you have been able to see all four of the very common mistakes that are able to quietly and insidiously chip away at your own sense of circulation and of your own personal sense of confidence after the age of. But here is the wonderfully and the beautifully hopeful news. Every single one of them can in fact be reversed. Your own body is a remarkably and an incredibly resilient thing, and even in our own later years of life, what matters the very most of all is the act of making some very small and some very conscious shifts that are able to align with the very way that your own body is able to function today, and not at all with the very way that it had been able to function many decades ago. So let's now take a moment to be able to walk through exactly what that is able to look like in a real-life context. The very first and the very most important shift that you can make is the simple act of slowing down. The experience of an intimacy is not at all a race. I would like for you to please try to think of it as being more like the process of preparing a beautiful and a handcrafted meal, instead of just simply microwaving a frozen dinner. And when you are able to allow your own body to be able to build up a sense of an arousal in a much more gradual and in a much more mindful way, your own delicate blood vessels will then be able to have enough time to be able to properly and to fully expand. And in a very gentle way, your own delicate tissues will then be able to receive a much greater supply of oxygen, and your own sense of physical sensitivity will then begin to grow instead of to diminish. And even just 5 extra minutes of a very relaxed and of a very mindful form of a buildup can be able to make a truly remarkable and a truly profound difference in both your own sense of circulation and in your own sense of an enjoyment. The second shift that you can make is the simple act of breathing deeply and of completely and utterly relaxing your own pelvic floor. A great many women do not even at all realize just how much of attention they are actually carrying in their own bodies until I am able to guide them through a very simple and a very gentle exercise in my own office. And I would like for you to please try it with me right now. I would like for you to please place one of your own hands on your own belly, and I would then like for you to please try to inhale very slowly through your own nose, and to then just simply allow your own belly to be able to rise. And then I would like for you to please try to exhale very slowly through your own mouth with a very soft and a very gentle sigh. And I would then like for you to please try to feel your own shoulders as they begin to drop, and to then just simply imagine your own pelvic floor as it begins to soften, just like a very soft and a very gentle hammock that is being released. And that one single and simple change will be able to tell your own nervous system that it is now safe for it to be able to open, it is now safe for it to be able to flow. And that is exactly what your own delicate blood vessels are in need of in order to be able to deliver a profound sense of a physical sensation to you. The third shift that you can make is the simple act of building in a sufficient amount of a recovery time for yourself. And just as your own joints are in need of a certain amount of a rest after a period of an exercise, your own intimate system is also able to thrive on a series of some gentle and of some restorative pauses. And if you have been used to the practice of a daily form of a self-pleasure, I would like for you to please try to experiment with the practice of doing it just every other day, or perhaps even just every third day. And I would then like for you to please try to notice for yourself just how much your own sense of a physical sensitivity is able to rebound when you are able to give to your own delicate tissues and to your own delicate nerve endings a sufficient chance to be able to properly and to fully reset themselves. One of my very dear patients, Maria, had once told me, I had always thought that more was better, but when I had first begun to give to myself a little bit more of a space, I was so very surprised to be able to find that I was actually beginning to want it once again, and that it was now beginning to feel so much better to me than it had before. And the fourth and final shift that you can make is the simple act of retraining your own brain away from a state of an overstimulation. And please know that this does not at all mean that you cannot at all use your own imagination. In fact, your own imagination is a very beautiful and a very powerful tool. But I would like for you to please try to guide it in the direction of some much gentler and of some much more realistic sources of your own personal arousal, the memory of a very tender and of a very loving moment, the sound of a very beautiful and of a very calming song, or the simple and the profound warmth of a gentle touch. And I would also like for you to please try to step back from the use of any screens or of any highly charged forms of a media for just a little while, and to then just simply see for yourself what is able to happen. And very often women are then able to rediscover a host of different and distinct sensations that they had long since thought were gone from their own lives forever. And please know that all of these very same shifts are not at all just theoretical ones. I have in fact been able to see them completely and utterly change the lives of so many of my own patients. And please allow me to share with you yet another very powerful and very inspiring story. Evelyn, who was a 73-year-old retired school principal, had first come to see me feeling so very, very defeated. She had said to me, "Dr. Stones, I have now lost all of my own personal sensitivity, and I now feel so very, very disconnected from my very own body." And when we had then taken the time to be able to unpack all of her own personal habits, we had then been able to find all four of these very same common mistakes. She had been rushing, she had been holding her own breath, she had been stimulating herself on a daily basis without any kind of a pause, and she had also been relying very heavily on the use of a fantasy. And instead of just simply giving to her a pill or of recommending to her some kind of a medical procedure, I had instead encouraged her to begin to make some very small and some very simple adjustments to her own personal routine, to be able to slow down, to be able to breathe, to be able to take some rest days, and to then be able to gradually step back from the use of any kind of a media. And just 6 short weeks later she had returned to my office with tears in her own eyes, but this time they had been the tears of a profound and of a beautiful joy. "I feel so very, very alive once again," she had said, "and it is not at all like I am 30 years of age once again, but I do in fact feel like myself. I can now feel my own body as it is beginning to respond to me, and that has been able to give to me a profound sense of a confidence that I had long since thought was gone from my own life forever." Stories just like Evelyn's are able to serve as a powerful reminder to me of a very profound and of a very beautiful truth that I so deeply and so desperately wish that every single woman who is over the age of 60 could be able to know. Your own body is still able to listen to you. Your own sense of circulation can still be able to improve, and your own personal sense of confidence can still be able to grow. But you do in fact have to be able to treat yourself with the very same sense of a patience and of a respect that you so richly and so completely deserve. And please be sure to remember that all of these very same changes do not at all just affect your own private and your own personal moments. They are in fact able to ripple outwards into every single other area of your own life. A better state of your own personal circulation is able to support a much better quality of your own sleep, a much more steady and a much more stable mood, and even a much better state of your own heart's health. And when you are able to feel so deeply and so profoundly connected to your own body, you will then be able to walk a little bit taller, you will then be able to engage with other people with a much greater sense of a warmth, and you will then be able to carry with you a very quiet and a very beautiful sense of a confidence that other people are able to both see and to feel. Now I would be so very honored to be able to hear from you. Which of these four very different and very distinct shifts feels the very most doable for you right here and right now? Is it the act of slowing down? Is it the act of breathing? Is it the act of resting? Or is it the act of retraining your own brain? Please be sure to type your own personal choice in the comments section below. And please know that your own personal answer may just be the very thing that is able to inspire another woman to be able to begin her very own shift. Please be sure to stay with me, because in the very final part of our discussion today we are going to be bringing all of this together into one single and very empowering message. I will be sure to recap all of the many common mistakes that you should be sure to avoid. I will be sure to highlight all of the many different and distinct solutions that are available to you, and most importantly of all, I will be sure to show you exactly how you can begin to redefine the experience of a pleasure as a form of a profound and of a beautiful nourishment, and not at all as a form of a performance at this particular stage of your own life. We have now come full circle. We began our conversation with the story of Elena, at the age of 74, who had suddenly come to realize that her own personal sense of circulation was beginning to falter, and we were then able to discover together that the underlying cause of her issue was not at all any kind of a disease. It was, in fact, her own personal habits. Habits that had once felt so very, very normal to her in her own 30s, but which had then become so very, very risky to her in her own 70s. And you are now able to know exactly what those very same habits are. The act of rushing through your own personal self-pleasure, the act of holding your own breath and of tightening your own pelvic floor, the act of stimulating yourself on a daily basis without any kind of a proper and of a sufficient recovery, and the act of relying far too much on the use of a fantasy or of a media. Each and every single one of these very same habits may at first seem to be quite small and to be quite insignificant in the moment, but over the course of time they can be able to silently and insidiously erode your own sense of circulation. They can be able to reduce your own sense of physical sensitivity, and they can be able to leave you questioning your own personal sense of confidence. But here is the very profound and the very beautiful truth that I so deeply and so desperately want for you to be able to carry with you. None of this at all means that you are in any way broken, and none of this at all means that your own very best years of life are now behind you. In fact, all of these very same habits can in fact all be reversed. Your own body is in fact still able to listen to you. Your own sense of circulation is in fact still able to be responsive, and your own personal sense of confidence can in fact still be able to grow so much stronger than it ever has been before. So let's now take just a moment to be able to recap all of the many different and distinct shifts that you can begin to make for yourself, starting as early as today. You can begin to slow down and to begin to treat the experience of an intimacy as a form of a profound and of a beautiful nourishment, and not at all as some kind of a You can begin to breathe deeply and to begin to relax your own body so that your own blood can be able to flow much more freely. You can begin to give to yourself some much needed recovery days, and to be able to let your own delicate tissues, your own delicate nerves, and your own precious energy all be able to reset themselves. And you can begin to retrain your own brain, and to be able to step away from a state of an overstimulation, and to be able to rediscover a much more natural and a much more gentle source of your own personal pleasure. And please know that all of these very same steps are not at all about any sense of a restriction. They are in fact all about a profound and a beautiful sense of a freedom to be able to feel so much more alive once again in your very own skin, a freedom to be able to reconnect with your own body, and a freedom to be able to enjoy the experience of an intimacy as a genuine source of your own energy instead of as a source of your own depletion. I have personally been able to see women who are in their late 70s and who are even in their own 80s be able to reclaim their own sense of physical sensitivity, be able to restore their own sense of vitality, and be able to feel a profound sense of a joy that they had long since thought was gone from their own lives forever. Not at all because of any kind of a pill, and not at all because of any kind of a medical procedure, but simply because they had been able to make the conscious and the deliberate choice to be able to listen to their own bodies and to be able to respond to them with a profound sense of a patience, of a presence, and of a So I would now like to be able to ask you, what is one single and simple step that you can begin to take for yourself starting today? Perhaps tonight you can simply pause and give to yourself just an extra few minutes to be able to breathe, or perhaps tomorrow you can simply allow yourself to be able to rest instead of just simply rushing into a very deeply ingrained habit. Or perhaps you can simply begin to notice for yourself when your own shoulders are beginning to feel a little bit tense, and to then just simply allow them to be able to soften. And please know that the process of a healing is not at all one single and giant leap. It is in fact a collection of some very small and of some very simple choices, and every single choice that you are able to make for yourself is able to matter in a very big and in a very profound way. I also want to be able to remind you that the experience of an intimacy is not at all just about the experience of a climax. It is in fact all about a profound and a beautiful sense of a connection to your own body, to your own breath, and even to your own heart. And when you are able to slow down and to be able to honor your own body in this very particular way, you are not at all just improving your own sense of circulation. You are also in fact nurturing your own personal sense of confidence, of your own quality of sleep, of your own overall mood, and of your own personal relationships. I would like for you to please try to imagine for just a moment yourself waking up tomorrow morning feeling so much more comfortable in your own skin, feeling so much more connected to your own body, and feeling so much more hopeful about all of the many wonderful and beautiful years that are still ahead of you. And please know that that particular vision is absolutely and completely possible for you, and that it is able to start with the very same way that you are able to treat yourself in your own most private and in your own most personal of moments. So here is my final and my most heartfelt invitation to you. I would like for you to please try to commit to just one single and simple change for yourself this week. I would like for you to please try to write it down and to then please be sure to share it with all of us in the comments section below. And please let this entire and wonderful community of women be able to see you, to be able to support you, and to be able to walk right alongside of you, because you are not at all alone in your own personal journey. Thousands and thousands of women who are of your very same age are all quietly and secretly asking the very same questions. They are all facing the very same challenges, and they are all so deeply and so desperately longing for the very same sense of a renewal. And if this particular video has been able to give to you a sense of a clarity or of a comfort, I would be so very grateful if you would please not keep it all to yourself. I would be so very grateful if you would please be sure to share it with a friend, with a sister, or with someone else that you may know who might also be in need of this very same encouragement. And you just might be the very same reason that another woman is able to feel a little bit less alone and a little bit more empowered. I'm Dr. Lily Stones, and from my heart to yours, I thank you so very much for having been here with me today. Thank you so very much for having had the courage to be able to listen, to be able to reflect, and to be able to take the very next step for your own personal health. You are so very, very worthy of a sense of a pleasure. You are so very, very worthy of a sense of a healing, and you are so very much worth taking care of. And until the very next time, I would like for you to please be sure to take some very gentle and some very loving care of yourself. And before we close, let me remind you, this video is for educational purposes only. It does not replace medical advice. Every woman's body is unique. If you are experiencing pain, significant changes, or have personal concerns, please consult with your healthcare provider. Your well-being deserves personalized care.